Hey, thanks for checking out this video. I'm Tom Neiman, and you're watching Wage Slave Creative, where we're going to explore ways with which people can integrate their creative lives with normal, busy adult lives. And today we are just going to chat a little bit about the process by which I have been able to integrate my creative life with my corporate job and my family life. And when I think about this, what I've realized is I've created what I would call a ladder, if you will. There are rungs on the ladder that help me stay engaged and in connection with my creative outlets, despite what's going on in life in general. It's almost like a Jacob's ladder for creative souls, if you will. And the process that I've developed, and it's kind of just been an evolution, hasn't been really something that's been thoughtfully designed, just accidents of history that have piled up to form this ladder. And the reason why I like the Jacob's ladder analogy is because instead of it being like a ladder into heaven, it is more like a ladder that will help us climb out of hell or purgatory. Those periods of time where we just can't connect with our creative outlets because of all the other things that are going on in life. And there are 7 rungs on this ladder. Ladder rung number 1 is what I consider to be part of the ideal circumstance. When you're in balance, your creative life and all the other aspects of your life are harmonized, and you still have pockets of time where you could sit down and plan. And when you're in this mode, it's kind of a virtuous cycle. A great best practice that has helped me a lot is sitting down at some point at the beginning of the week on Sunday and looking ahead on my calendar and really identifying what type of week I'm going to be managing through over the next 7 days. I'll even kind of categorize in my mind what kind of week it is. It's either kind of a monster week because I have a ton of appointments and maybe some work-related travel and other responsibilities and commitments that I need to tend to. Or it is a week that is going to avail to me a lot of freedom to do things that are fun, and that includes my creative outlets, or somewhere in between. And then from that point, I'll ask myself a couple of questions. What creative projects do I meaningfully want to move along during this week? And what pockets of time can I choose to work on those projects within? And by looking at the calendar, you could easily assess whether or not the mornings are going to be good or the evenings, whether or not there's perhaps maybe lunchtime where you could advance some of the work that you wish to work on. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to finish a painting or finish a project or even optimize or even improve a project. It just means that you're going to stay engaged with the work that you're looking to do. And that question kind of sets the direction, and it kind of helps me think more clearly about the rest of the planning that we'll work through in order to make sure that we stay in touch with our creative outlets. So let's talk about ladder rung number 2. There are just normal work weeks where the workload is demanding, but it's manageable. And we're not necessarily overwhelmed, but we do have quite a few commitments that we need to address throughout each day and each week. And if we're not careful, they could easily nibble away at our creative time. The same way that they could nibble away at family time. There might be tight margins, limited time, limited energy. So the questions just simply change a little bit. A good question that I find myself asking that's really helpful are, what are the smallest projects that I could work on that would help me stay in touch with my creative outlets? Not can I do the project, but what version of the projects that I have in mind fit within my schedule today? It could mean taking on a sketch instead of starting a new painting. It might mean do a small thumbnail portrait of a famous person, which I do frequently on my other YouTube channel called Paint and Draw with Tom. Essentially, you have the same commitment to your creative practice, just working in smaller units. While you're working on the second rung of the ladder, you might also ask questions like, what creative projects mean the most to me this week? Or what creative projects matter the most for this week? You can write them down, create a list of 3 to 5 of them, and don't overcommit when you build out your task list related to those projects. Be very conservative and realistic. Then there's ladder rung number 3. And that relates to those days that are fragmented. There's multiple meetings and errands, there's interruptions, perhaps maybe little emergencies that you're dealing with as well. Then the question becomes, what can I do in 10 to 25 minutes or so to keep different projects that I have in the queue alive? And this might involve doing little thumbnail sketches, little charcoal drawings, perhaps maybe value studies, pulling references, laying things out for tomorrow. This isn't necessarily prep. This is real work. It's just scaled appropriately to meet the moment and make sure that you stay in touch with your creative life. It's a really good idea, whether you're making your way through the middle of the week or you're in your Sunday planning session, to ask yourself questions that allow you to pre-approve smaller units. This helps you deal with the uncertainty that you might be confronted with at any given point in time. You might go from a week where you're in total command of your schedule, and that gets blown up because you're met with several emergent needs from clients, maybe something's going on in your family or your household that is pulling you away more frequently than you originally expected. That's okay. If you have these pre-approved smaller units of work, you'll be set up for success. You'll make progress despite adversity. So you could do things like finish this sentence. If the week gets hard, it still counts if I only do blank. This removes any guilt or remorse before it shows up because you already have a plan B in place. Then there's ladder rung number 4. Some days you're completely overloaded. Unexpected tasks, emotional weight from something that you're dealing with. There's no usable blocks of time that you can plan for. So the question drops again. What single action keeps me in relationship with my work today? And it might boil down just to simply thinking through some problems and dealing with some of the mental hurdles that you need to deal with when you're trying to complete your work of art. One mark, one sentence, opening a sketchbook, resetting your space, straightening your studio or your workspace just a little bit can make all the difference and help you kind of reset yourself and be prepared for the next substantial block of time that you have available to you in the future. So in this sense, you're kind of going to define the floor. And this is a great thing to do during your Sunday planning session, but it could really be done at any time. You could ask yourself, what is my under 10-minute action item that I can complete if everything in my schedule collapses? Name it so you don't have to decide later. So for example, I have 2 go-to exercises that I'll use that I know I can complete in under 10 minutes. One is a blind contour sketch where I'll actually look at the image that I am rendering. I won't look down at the paper, and within 5 to 10 minutes, I will just trace the outline, never lifting my instrument, my pen or pencil off the paper. And this does a really good job of creating that eye-hand connection that's so important for folks that draw and paint. In addition to that, I have other exercises. Sometimes I'll just do an abstract painting using acrylic markers and ballpoint pen in my sketchbook. And I can govern how much time that I spend on that project just by giving myself a time limit. I might say to myself, okay, I'm going to use the last 10 minutes of my lunchtime in order to complete a quick abstract sketch, and we'll see what happens. That brings us to ladder rung number 5. Here, you're in survival mode. There are days where you're completely exhausted. Maybe you had a horrible night's sleep the night before because you were dealing with an emergency, or you just had a bout of insomnia. Maybe you're just clearing some sort of virus or a cold, all the normal things that might happen that zap you of your energy. You're exhausted, you're in crisis mode, there's zero margin, no extra time where you could schedule creative work. On those days, the question becomes something like, what can I do in under 5 to 10 minutes in order to protect my creative life? And here you can start to give yourself a little bit of permission to rest. Remember, the value of our creative lives is never going to be based upon our output alone. So resting may help fuel your next great idea, your most rewarding project that you ever start. So you want to give yourself permission to rest. You could ask yourself honestly, in this circumstance, do I need to focus on protecting my creative energy this week? And if you feel like the answer is yes, then honor it. Perhaps maybe instead of starting new works, perhaps maybe instead of using whatever pockets of time emerge that give you freedom to do unscheduled things, go for a walk and just observe nature. Then there's ladder rung number 6. This is the rung on the ladder that we typically avoid talking about. Sometimes the most creative act that we can undertake is simply stopping. It's easy to forget that rest isn't quitting, it's capacity management, if we need to put some sort of technical term around it. Kind of sounds like a project management or an engineering type term. And if that's needed to fit the situation, then use it. Burnout ends creative lives, perhaps maybe more frequently than laziness does. This framework isn't about discipline, it's about staying in the game and building continuity as we integrate our creative lives into real life that we have to manage through. So we don't abandon creativity when life gets busy. We shrink the unit of work. That's how we build something slowly and honestly, something that can last a long time and help us avoid destroying ourselves in the process. Finally, there's ladder rung number 7. When you stop or take a pause with your creative practice, it's important to make the most of it. And one of the ways that we do this is not only just by resting up and recharging, or perhaps shifting gears in some way to help us build energy so we can re-engage. When you stop or take a pause with your creative practice, it's important to make the most of it. Certainly we want to rest up and recharge, but it should be based upon one condition, and that is we make the commitment to restart as soon as possible. As soon as our batteries feel a little more full, it's important to re-engage, even with a smaller task or a smaller project. The important thing is to make sure that you have a game plan for re-engaging with your creative practice as soon as possible. So in any event, hopefully you found this helpful. The 7 rungs of Jacob's ladder for creative souls. And if you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Consider checking out some of the other videos. And you may want to check out the printable PDF version of this list of the 7 rungs of Jacob's ladder for creative souls that I'll make available to you down in the notes. Thanks for watching. Stay well. See you soon.